Hello everybody and welcome to another uncanny episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by supporters on Patreon. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The parentage of the woman now known as Polaris is a bit of a complicated issue, so let's begin by untangling that. Her biological mother was a woman named Susanna who was married to a pilot named Arnold, although their surnames are as of yet unrevealed. Susanna felt neglected by her husband and ended up cheating on him with another man. Her paramour was someone who had many names over the years, including Max Eisenhardt, Eric Lenscher, and simply Magnus. Of course, most will likely know him best as the mutant master of magnetism, Magneto. This affair resulted in the birth of a daughter named Lorna, who Arnold initially believed to be his. However, roughly 3 years later, he grew suspicious and had a DNA test performed confirming his wife's infidelity. He confronted her about this that same day while the family was flying in their private plane. This resulted in a loud argument, causing Lorna to start crying for her parents to stop fighting. Susanna turned her attention towards Lorna and started yelling at her, but then something unusual happened. You see, while it's most common for mutants to develop their powers during puberty, it's also possible for them to emerge earlier, sometimes due to external stresses. When 3-year-old Lorna lashed out with the magnetic powers she'd inherited from her biological father, she inadvertently destroyed the plane and her parents along with it. She was found alive in the wreckage by Magneto, her natural hair color having shifted to a light green by her mutation. Alerted by the magnetic pulse she unleashed, Magneto knew that Lorna was too young to join him. He had his lackey, Mastermind, use his powers over mental illusions to rewrite Lorna's memories of that day, and afford her a normal life for a while longer. With her true parentage unrevealed to the world, she was taken in by those who were thought to be her closest relatives, Arnold's sister and her husband. She took her foster parents' surname to become Lorna Dane, and they insisted that she dye her hair brown to avoid attracting undue attention. Now, for the next part of our story, we must turn our attention to a young man named Samuel Saxon, aka Star Saxon. He would later become the android criminal known as the Machinesmith, but at this point in time he was still mastering the principles of robotics by studying technology that was pioneered by Victor Von Doom. Seeking to raise funds, he began his criminal career from behind the scenes by constructing a group of androids known as the Demi-Men, as well as a robotic duplicate of Magneto to lead them. Posing as the real thing, the robot Magneto recruited a number of legitimate mutants, most notably among them being the hypnotic Mesmero, who served as his second-in-command. By controlling the Magneto robot remotely, Saxon had Mesmero use a psyche generator machine that he'd created to mentally compel mutants with latent powers to flock to San Francisco. One of those affected was Lorna Dane, who by this point had grown into a teenager while her powers remained suppressed. Dazed by Saxon's machine, she was nearly hit by a passing vehicle, but was rescued by the X-Man Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. Naturally, the X-Men would soon clash with the supposedly mutant Demi-Men. Mesmero and his elite guard subsequently attacked Bobby and Lorna. However, while Iceman was hypnotized, the Demi-Men bowed to Lorna Dane. Mesmero took them both back to his desert headquarters, Mutant City, and Lorna was placed in a machine that activated her latent abilities. In an ironic twist of fate, he then mesmerized her into believing that Magneto was her father, seemingly unaware that his attempted deception was actually the truth. Complicating matters further, the Magneto robot arrived to seemingly confirm Lorna's parentage, with neither Mesmero nor the X-Men aware that it was actually an android imposter. Lorna initially sided with her supposed father, adopting the moniker M2, or Magneto II. The situation only became more complicated when the X-Men leader Cyclops infiltrated Mutant City under the guise of Eric the Red, a costumed identity later used by others on more than one occasion. And so rather than going off on that tangent, let's try to untangle this mess and simplify things a little. Upon investigating, Iceman discovered that the couple who were legally listed as Lorna's birth parents died in a plane crash before she was adopted by the Danes. He relayed this information to her and convinced her that she wasn't Magneto's daughter. She then helped the X-Men defeat Mesmero and the Demi-Men, although the phony Magneto escaped. That robot was later destroyed by a mutant hunting Sentinel, although the X-Men would not be made aware of the deception for several years. Star Saxon's role in all of this went completely undetected by all those involved, and fortunately he's no longer relevant for the remainder of this topic, so we need not worry about any more robotic duplicates complicating matters further. With her magnetic powers unlocked, Lorna returned to New York with the X-Men, where she initially responded flirtatiously to affection from Iceman. But then she was attacked and abducted from her Manhattan apartment by a pair of Sentinels. While being held captive, Lorna met another mutant, Alex Summers, codenamed Havoc, who was imprisoned alongside her and Iceman. As the brother of Cyclops, he's another notable X-Man, and so we'll likely talk about his backstory another time. Lorna grew close with Alex quickly, and when the other X-Men came to their rescue, she decided to properly join the team. Following this, as a romantic relationship began blossoming between Lorna and Alex, a jealous Bobby was left feeling jilted. This led to several clashes between the two boys until Lorna was struck by a chunk of ice during one of their scuffles. Lorna finally put her foot down, declaring that she was never his girlfriend, and Iceman briefly left. She and Havoc subsequently went on a mission to the Savage Land, a preserved prehistoric jungle hidden in the Antarctic, and met its protector, Kazar. Lorna briefly used the codename Magnetrix, but soon thought better and abandoned the moniker. It was during this trip that Lorna first saw the real Magneto, but of course he didn't recognize her. She subsequently encountered a group of mutants called the Promise, who wished to recruit her and Alex since they were the newest X-Men and thus the least indoctrinated by Xavier. Their leader, Tobias Messenger, operated on the assumption that the world would eventually be destroyed in a war between humans and mutants, and that he was qualified to rebuild society in the aftermath. As such, he used deviant technology to place himself and other mutants into suspended animation, awakening once every decade to assess the situation and recruit others to his cause. His attempts to do this to Lorna ultimately came to naught due to infighting within the group and intervention from Professor X. But while she was briefly under his influence, Lorna used her magnetic powers to fly for the first time. Sometime later, there was yet another confrontation between Havoc and Iceman, but this time Alex was the one who left the group after injuring Bobby. Xavier sent Lorna to the American Southwest to retrieve Alex, where she was harassed by a gang of bikers. The situation caught the attention of the Incredible Hulk, who initially mistook Lorna for his green-skinned lover from the microverse, Jarella. After saving her from the Green Goliath, Alex accompanied Lorna with the intention of rejoining the X-Men. However, while they made their way back, the couple was captured by the subversive organization known as the Secret Empire, along with a number of other mutants. Fortunately, they were soon freed by Captain America, the Falcon, and the remaining X-Men. After that, Lorna and Alex were among those sent to investigate a powerful mutant on the island of Krakoa. They discovered that Krakoa itself was the mutant, and most of the X-Men were defeated and captured. Cyclops escaped and later returned with an all-new, all-different team to rescue the captive heroes from the living island. In the end, by combining her abilities with several of her teammates, Lorna was able to cleave Krakoa from the planet itself and send it hurtling into space. Following this incident, most of the original X-Men left the group while Alex and Lorna retired to New Mexico. The couple lived beside the Rio Diablo mountain range where they pursued a shared interest in geophysics. However, their life together was soon interrupted by the arrival of someone calling himself Eric the Red. As mentioned earlier, that identity was previously used by Cyclops to infiltrate Mesmero's mutant city, but this Eric the Red, also known as Devon Shikari, was actually a member of the alien Shi'ar race. He mentally manipulated Lorna and directed her to attack Alex, allowing Shikari to take control of both of them. Donning a new costume, Lorna Dane dubbed herself Polaris, the mistress of magnetism. She and Havoc attacked the X-Men alongside Eric the Red, who wanted to stop the mutants from opposing his master, the Shi'ar Emperor D'Ken. Even with his mind enslaved, Havoc was alarmed and dismayed when Polaris was defeated by Storm. Shikari escaped with the two mutants, but Havoc and Polaris would not remain under his thumb for long. Eric the Red ultimately failed in his mission as the X-Men joined forces with D'Ken's sister, Lilandra Neramani, and helped overthrow the Mad Emperor. Professor X freed Lorna and Alex from Shikari's mental conditioning, and the two stayed on Muir Island while they recovered. They befriended Xavier's ally, Moira McTaggart, and her assistant, Jamie Madrox, aka Multiple Man. During this time, Alex clashed with his nemesis, the Living Pharaoh, aka the Living Monolith, but we'll talk more about that relationship in the inevitable video focusing on Havoc. Polaris and Havoc also briefly fought alongside the Defenders during the infamous Defender for a Day debacle. They subsequently aided the X-Men in a battle with Moira McTaggart's mutant son, Proteus. After that, Lorna and Alex returned to their New Mexico home and completed their education, each earning a master's degree in geophysics. They were then drawn back to the X-Men when the assassin Arcade blackmailed the team into attacking Dr. Doom by kidnapping their loved ones. While the primary X-Men team carried out Arcade's mission, Polaris and Havoc joined Iceman and Banshee to rescue his prisoners from Murder World. The couple returned to their life together thereafter, remaining allies with but not members of the X-Men. The next time they were visited by a member of the team, it was a happier circumstance as Cyclops introduced Havoc to their long-lost father, Corsair. Things continued without incident for a while, but of course their idyllic life together would eventually be interrupted once again. You see, another mutant team that existed during this time was the Marauders, assembled by the insane superhuman geneticist Nathaniel Essex, better known as Mr. Sinister. One of these Marauders was a woman named Alice McAllister, or Malice, who existed as a disembodied psionic entity. Malice was separated from her own physical form when her mutant powers first manifested, but she gained the ability to possess others. When Havoc decided to visit the X-Men alone, for reasons that we'll get into in his video, Malice seized the opportunity to take control of Lorna's body. Sinister then sent 3 of the Marauders to attack Polaris as a way of testing her. As Polaris, Malice defeated her attackers and declared herself their new leader, just as Sinister had planned. While all that was happening, the X-Men team that Alex met was very different from the one he knew, and several of their members had been grievously injured in a battle with the Marauders during an event known as the Mutant Massacre. He decided to rejoin the team and was with them when they were subsequently attacked by the Malice-possessed Lorna. This was not the team's first encounter with Malice, and so the X-Man Psylocke quickly deduced that Polaris was under her control. Later, Malice was distraught to discover that the way Lorna's magnetic powers interacted with her own energy matrix rendered the pair unable to separate. Mr. Sinister admitted that he'd planned this, but placated Malice by claiming that she'd still be able to possess others and now had a permanent body to come home to. She continued serving and fought alongside him in another encounter with the X-Men. In addition to the team's then current roster, this included the original 5 X-Men, who had come together as a second team, X-Factor. During that battle, Mr. Sinister was defeated and seemingly killed by Cyclops, while Polaris slipped away and escaped, retreating to South America. After that, Malice began to weaken, and slowly, Lorna was able to start reasserting control over her own body. For weeks, she wished to contact Alex, eventually finding the courage to call, but hanging up quickly when he was unable to answer. Now, for the next part of our tale, we need to introduce yet another character, the sorceress Zala Dane, who claimed to be Lorna's sister. Even though the Danes were Lorna's adoptive parents, some evidence has suggested that Lorna and Zala are somehow blood-related, although this remains unconfirmed and the details of Zala Dane's early life are currently undocumented. As an adult, she served as Garrick the Sun God's queen priestess in the Savage Land and clashed with the likes of Kazar and the X-Men. She also briefly worked alongside the brilliant mad geneticist known as the High Evolutionary. After several defeats, Zala Dane searched the world for her alleged sister, sending her men to capture her in Chile. Havoc took several X-Men and attempted to intervene after tracing Lorna's call, tracking Zala Dane's forces back to the Savage Land. There, Zala used the High Evolutionary's technology to transfer Lorna's magnetic powers into herself. As a positive side effect, the loss of her abilities severed the link between Lorna and Malice, purging the psionic entity from her body. Furthermore, Lorna still possessed the mutant gene and soon developed different powers like increased strength and invulnerability. Using these abilities to free herself from captivity at the hands of her sister, Lorna was finally able to reunite with Alex, free of Malice's control. She then joined forces with the X-Men and Kazar, although Zala Dane escaped. The X-Men were then teleported back to their Australian headquarters by their Aboriginal ally Gateway, leaving Lorna behind. She was later picked up by an Antarctic freighter, but soon afterwards the crew began savagely fighting each other. As it turns out, Lorna's new powers generated and fed on the negative emotions in those around her, allowing her to grow larger and stronger. Between the infighting among the crew and the storm raging outside, the ship eventually sank. Fortunately, Lorna was found and rescued by the Irish mutant Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee. She was brought back to Muir Island where her condition and abilities were assessed by Moira McTaggart. She then helped repel an attack from a group of cyborgs known as the Reavers before she realized that her new abilities induced negative emotions in people around her. These powers caught the attention of an other-dimensional psionic entity known as the Shadow King. The Shadow King took control of Professor Xavier's son, Legion, and used him to spread his influence over Muir Island and imprison Lorna. He then used Lorna as a sort of nexus point, granting him further access to Earth from the astral plane. Meanwhile, Magneto battled with Zala Dane in the Savage Land and ultimately killed her, ostensibly releasing her stolen magnetic energy. And so when the X-Man Forge used Psylocke's power to free Lorna from the Shadow King, she also returned to her natural size and regained her original abilities. With the Shadow King defeated, the X-Men reorganized yet again, with their original members rejoining the team, leaving the name X-Factor behind. That moniker was then appropriated by Dr. Valerie Cooper, who used it for a new government-sponsored mutant team. Havoc agreed to lead this new group, and Lorna also joined alongside Multiple Man, Wolfsbane, Quicksilver, and Strong Guy. As Polaris, Lorna quickly became a valued member of the team, one who Cooper hoped could be used against Magneto. During this time, she begrudgingly spoke with the superhuman psychiatrist Leonard Samson, allowing her to confront trauma from her possession. Samson also believed that Lorna suffered from self-image issues, although she pushed back against the notion and donned an intentionally provocative costume. For a while, she clashed with her teammate Wolfsbane due to her attraction to Alex, but the two ultimately bonded over similar experiences of being manipulated by others. Lorna subsequently changed her costume again, bringing it more in line with what the others were wearing. Not long after that, she and Alex were involved in an altercation with an anti-mutant bigot that erupted into a small riot. They were arrested as a result, but Forge, working as their government liaison, posted their bail, and Polaris delivered a brief but passionate statement to the press. She then clashed with a mercenary known as Random, who was actually hired to test her abilities. The team begrudgingly fought alongside Random while battling the villain known as Haven, and slowly became allies. Sometime after that, Mr. Sinister returned and sought to bond Polaris with Malice once more. Not wanting to be trapped again, Malice instead possessed Alex and tried to use his body to kill Lorna. However, Mr. Sinister arrived as an unlikely ally and aided X-Factor against the possessed Alex. In the end, Malice was successfully separated from Havoc, and Sinister seemingly killed her. The various X-teams subsequently encountered a variety of other enemies, including the techno-organic alien race known as the Phalanx. And sometime after that, the previously mentioned mercenary, Random, was sent to attack and abduct Alex. This time, the one who hired him was the Dark Beast, an evil version of X-Man Hank McCoy from the twisted Age of Apocalypse timeline. The abduction was covered up by Dark Beast's agent Fatale, who planted a fake note from Alex claiming he needed time alone. When Lorna later ran into Random again, she greeted him as a friend, happy to have someone to talk to. However, she soon realized that he'd betrayed X-Factor when she saw that Random and Alex had joined a new version of the mutant terrorist group, the Brotherhood. Believing that Alex had been brainwashed by Dark Beast, she tried to get through to him and convince him to come back to her. However, he was secretly working to thwart the Dark Beast's plans, maintaining his cover by striking her with one of his plasma blasts. Lorna managed to defend herself with her magnetic shields, but went into cardiac arrest and spent most of the following week in the hospital. She recovered quickly, all things considered, but was dismayed by the subsequent induction of known criminals, Sabretooth and Mystique, into X-Factor. As the team went underground to continue operating without government oversight, Polaris began to question her place on it. Furthermore, her concerns about Sabretooth were justified when he successfully removed his restraining collar and turned on his teammates. While they were recovering from that incident, Lorna and the other members of X-Factor were abducted and protected by Havoc's Brotherhood. His experiences had indeed left him more radicalized, but Alex soon exposed his true intentions by opposing Dark Beast and freeing his human prisoners. He was subsequently caught and arrested, but Polaris freed him so they could finally talk. The truth about his departure finally came to light, and while Lorna understood his motivations, she couldn't forgive his betrayal and ended their relationship. After that, a mutant from the future named Greystone attempted to build a device that would return him to his own time, but realized too late that he'd failed and that his machine would soon explode. Havoc attempted to save Greystone, and while he did prevent the machine from damaging the space-time continuum, both mutants were caught in the blast and seemingly killed while Lorna watched from below. In reality, while Greystone was killed, Alex was shunted off to an alternate timeline known as the Mutant X-verse, where he inhabited the body of his counterpart there. X-Factor disbanded shortly thereafter, although Lorna knew in her heart that Alex was still alive somewhere. Now, that brings us to the end of today's story. However, there is certainly more to explore when it comes to Polaris, not least of which being the revelation of her true parentage. And so if you'd like a continuation of this video, be sure to let me know in the comments. Alternatively, you can tell me if you'd rather have one which looks at events from Havoc's point of view. I do intend on getting around to that eventually, but let me know which one you'd rather see first. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page where, for only $1 a month, you can get your name in the special thanks here, and vote in polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel. But that's all I've got for you this week, and until next time, true believers, Excelsior!